Chapter 1 of The Seventh Man by Max Brand. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Robert Kuiper. The Seventh Man by Max Brand. Chapter 1. Spring. A man under 30 needs neighbors. And to stop up the current of his life with a long silence is like obstructing a river. Eventually the water either sweeps away the dam or rises over it, and the stronger the dam, the more destructive is that final rush to freedom. Vic Gregg was on the danger side of 30, and he lived alone in the mountains all that winter. He wanted to marry Betty Neal, but marriage means money. Therefore, Vic contracted $1,500 worth of mining for the Duncans, and instead of taking a partner, he went after that stake single-handed. He's a very rare man who can turn out that amount of labor in a single season, but Gregg furnished that exception which establishes the rule. He did the assessment work on 14 claims and almost finished the 15th. Yet he paid the price. Week after week his set of drills was wife and child to him, and for conversation he had only the clangor of the 4-pound single jack on the drill heads, with the crashing of the shots now and then as periods to the chatter of iron on iron. He kept at it, and in the end he almost finished the allotted work, but for all of it he paid in full. The acid loneliness ate into him. To be sure, from boyhood he knew the mountain quiet, the still heights and the solemn echoes, but toward the close of the long isolation, the end of each day found him oppressed by a weightier sense of burden. In a few days he would begin to talk to himself. From the first, the evening pause after supper hurt him most, for a man needs a talk as well as tobacco. And after a time he dreaded these evenings so bitterly that he purposely spent himself every day so as to pass from supper into sleep at a stride. It needed a long day to burn out his strength thoroughly, so he set his rusted alarm clock, and before dawn it brought him groaning out of the blankets to cook a hasty breakfast and go slowly up to the tunnel. In short, he wedded himself to his work. He stepped into a routine which took the place of thought, and the change in him was so gradual that he did not see the danger. A mirror might have shown it to him as he stood this morning at the door of his lean-to, for the wind fluttered the shirt around his labor-dried body, and his forehead puckered in a frown grown habitual. It was a narrow face with rather close-set eyes and a slanted forehead which gave token to a single-track mind, a single-purpose nature with 180 pounds of strong sinews and iron-hard muscle to give it significance. Such was Vic Gregg as he stood at the door waiting for the coffee he had drunk to brush away the cobwebs of sleep. And then he heard the eagle scream. Great many people have never heard the scream of an eagle. The only voice they connect with the king of the air is a ludicrously feeble squawk, dim with the distance, but in his great moments the eagle has a war cry like that of a hawk, but harsher, hoarser, tenfold in volume. This sound cut into the night in the gulch, and Vic Gregg started and glanced about, for echoes made the sound stand at his side. Then he looked up and saw 2 eagles fighting in the light of the morning. He knew what it meant, the beginning of the mating season, and these 2 battling for a prize. They darted away. They flashed together with reaching talons and gaping beaks, and dropped in a tumult of wings, then soared and clashed once more until one of them folded his wings and dropped bullet-like out of the morning into the night. Close over Gregg's head the wings flirted out, 10 feet from tip to tip, beat down with a great washing sound, and the bird shot across the valley in a level flight. The conqueror screamed a long insult down the hollow. For a while he balanced, craning his bald head as if he sought applause, then, without visible movement of his wings, sailed away over the peaks. A feather fluttered slowly down past Vic Gregg. He looked down to it and rubbed the ache out of the back of his neck. All about him the fresh morning was falling. Yonder shone a green mottled face of granite, and there a red iron blowout streaked with veins of glittering silicate. And in this corner, still misted with the last delicate shades of night, glimmered rhyolite, lavender pink. The single jack dropped from the hand of Gregg, and his frown relaxed. When he stretched his arms, the cramps of labor unkinked and let the warm blood flow swiftly, and in the pleasure of it he closed his eyes and drew a luxurious breath. He stepped from the door with his head high and his heart lighter, and when his hobnailed shoe clinked on the fallen hammer, he kicked it spinning from his path. That act brought a smile into his eyes, and he sauntered to the edge of the little plateau and looked down into the wide chasm of the Asper Valley. Blue shadows washed across it, though morning shone across Gregg on the height, and his glance dropped in a 2,000-foot plunge to a single yellow eye that winked through the darkness, a light in the trapper's cabin. But the dawn was falling swiftly now, and while Gregg lingered the blue grew thin, purple-tinted, and then dark, slender points pricked up, which he knew to be the pines. Last of all, he caught the sheen of grass. Around him pressed a perfect silence, the quiet of night holding over into the day, yet he cast a glance behind him as if he heard a voice. Indeed, he felt that someone approached him, someone for whom he had been waiting, yet it was a sad expectancy and more like homesickness than anything he knew. "Ah, hell," said Vic Gregg. "It's spring." A deep-throated echo boomed back at him, and the sound went down the gulch, 3 times repeated. "Spring," repeated Gregg more softly, as if he feared to rouse that echo. "Damned if it ain't." He shrugged his shoulders and turned resolutely toward the lean-to, picking up the discarded hammer on the way. By instinct he caught it at exactly the right balance for his strength and arm, and the handle, polished by his grip, played with an oiled, frictionless movement against the calluses of his palm. From the many hours of drilling, fingers crooked, he could only straighten them by a painful effort. Bad hand for cards, he decided gloomily, and still frowning over this, he reached the door. There he paused in instant repugnance, for the place was strange to him. In thought and wish he was even now galloping Grey Molly over the grass along the Asper, and he had to wrench himself into the mood of the patient miner. There lay his blankets, rumpled, brown with dirt, and he shivered at the sight of them. The night had been cold. Before he fell asleep he had flung the magazine into the corner, and now the wind rustled its torn, yellowed pages in a whisper that spoke to Gregg of the 10 times repeated stories, tales of adventure, drifts of tobacco smoke in gaming halls, the chant of the croupier behind the wheel, deep voices of men, laughter of pretty girls, tattoo of running horses, shouts which only red eye can inspire. He sniffed the air. The odor of burned bacon and coffee permeated the cabin. He turned to the right and saw his discarded overalls with ragged holes at the knees. He turned to the left and looked into the face of the rusted alarm clock. Its quick, soft ticking sent an ache of weariness through him. "Oh, what's wrong with me?" muttered Gregg. Even that voice seemed ghostly loud in the cabin, and he shivered again. "I must be going nutty." As if to escape from his own thoughts, he stepped out into the sun again, and it was so grateful to him after the chill shadow of the lean-to that he looked up smiling into the sky. A west wind urged a scattering herd of clouds over the peaks, tumbled masses of white which puffed into transparent silver at the edges, and behind long wraiths of